Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Spring is an enchanting time of the year when nature awakened from its winter hibernation and flirted with every heart. It was a magical time when the earth was dressed in fresh clothes, like a goddess of beauty in an elegant dress adorned with colorful flowers. In this dawning colorful world lurked a beautiful modern country house with a large garden and lots of flowers. It was the perfect place for a relaxing and peaceful life for the husband and wife who had settled in it. The house was located in a charming place amidst beautiful nature and lush greenery. The large garden of the house was a real joy for the owners. There grew a variety of flowers, which gave the place bright and rich colors. Shrubs and trees created cozy corners for walking and relaxing, and paths intertwined along flower beds invited to a walk in the garden at any time of the year. But all the beauty of the place was suddenly overshadowed by a conversation on one of the most ordinary days when her husband came home. "Darling, I need to talk to you," exhaled Evelyn nervously, clutching the hem of her silk white blouse in her trembling hands. "What's wrong?" David anxiously looked at his wife, his heart clenched, feeling something heavy in the air. I have a heart condition, as it turned out today," Evelyn whispered to him, like bitter tears on the verge of spilling out. Startled, David walked over and sat down on the bed next to her, feeling his own heart begin to pound faster. "How? But you've never complained about your heart." His voice sounded weak, as if he had lost his last thread of hope. "I don't know." Evelyn shook her head, lowering her gaze. "I just don't know. There were so many signs that I ignored, thinking it was just overwork." She sighed, barely holding back tears of bitterness. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" David's voice sounded downcast. "I didn't want you to worry. You work so hard. You're busy all the time. I wanted to always see you smiling." Evelyn smiled sadly herself. David took her fragile hand in his big and strong ones, tried to squeeze it affectionately in consolation. "We'll find a way to help you. We'll get through this together." His voice trembled, but there was an intention to fight to the end. "Unfortunately, I don't think so, darling. I don't have long to live. An operation that could help is dangerous, and we don't do it here. We need a donor, and we don't have time to find one. I'm sorry, but..." Evelyn smiled weakly again. Their gazes met, and Evelyn finally cried. She began to quickly wipe away her tears with her sleeve, and David wrapped his arms around her and pulled her against him and began to stroke her head. Evelyn hugged her husband back and snuggled into his shoulder. If only she knew what a hypocritical man her husband was in this situation, and what glaring traits of hypocrisy he displayed. When Evelyn had so suddenly announced his imminent death, he had shown no sincere presence or sympathy. It was only a mask. Although outwardly he tried to look sad and grieved, he didn't actually feel any true regret, and he wasn't even gnawed by his conscience for it. He felt that he had truly loved his wife once, but since their passion had faded during their 10 years of marriage, he no longer needed her. And that was enough. Evelyn was certainly a beautiful woman, a brunette with thick, silky chestnut-colored hair, its dark strands falling down her back in light curls, creating the illusion of shine and mystery. The color of her hair emphasized the brightness, contrast of her brown eyes, which, like topaz stones, attracted the attention of others. In the beginning, David was very jealous of his wife to other men, but with time his passion waned, love passed, and Evelyn, as he thought, ceased to be so attractive. Though she had a neat, straight nose and thick, long eyelashes, her skin was fair with a healthy blush, like a rose petal shining in the sun. Beautiful and intriguing, she always had some elusive and indescribable appeal. David fell out of love with his wife and continued to lead his ordinary life without much change. Did not pay proper attention to Evelyn and her problems. Didn't help or sympathize. Didn't care or do anything to support his wife in her difficult times. Instead, he remained indifferent and uninterested. And Evelyn was fine with that, so he had no plans to leave her. With his wife was easy and comfortable, so he continued to live together. David didn't want to lose his status in society and pretended in front of others, showing how he was concerned and cared for his wife and took on the role of a good and devoted husband. However, if one were to go deeper inside his soul, they would be able to notice the lack of true emotion and genuine care. David was not the most handsome, but an insanely charming and charismatic man. Possessed a uniquely attractive charm that proved capable of attracting the attention of others. Outwardly, he was not by all standards handsome in the traditional sense, but his individual appeal stemmed from his energy, expressive gaze, and charm. His ability to be magnetic lay in his ability to find common ground with people, to be attentive and interested in their lives. And, of course, without for a second delving into their emotions and feelings, he was a gifted, talkative conversationalist who professionally pretended to be able to listen and find common interests with anyone. His mad charm also stemmed from his ability to evoke positive emotions and good moods in those around him. He had the ability to awaken the feelings of the people around him, to make them laugh and inspire them. His energy and positivity mesmerized everyone who was near him. And no one, absolutely no one, could suspect him of hypocrisy. But still, David was not able to completely ignore Evelyn's words that she was sick. He was surprised by the coincidence and considered it very fortunate, especially for himself. It meant that he was able to officially inform his wife that he needed to leave on watch soon. And now, after this news from Evelyn, not to look for reasons why he couldn't take her with him. It was all obvious. David sat in silence, looking at the papers in front of him. It was a contract for a job in another city that he had already signed. His thoughts were swimming, trying to find the right words to speak to Evelyn. He realized that he would have to explain that he would be going on the shift without her, and it was important to him that it be understood and accepted. He was not going to divorce, so as not to hurt Evelyn further by doing so. David felt a lot of positive feelings for her. They had been together for so long and had once really loved each other, and he didn't want a scandal. His head was filled with mixed feelings. On the one hand, David felt an obligation to his employer and knew that this job was the most important one in his life, and he didn't want to miss it. But on the other hand, he realized that his departure would leave Evelyn here alone, without his supervision. He worried about how she would end her days alone, and how he would handle the inheritance, but all in all, what could happen? So he made the decision to go. After all, Evelyn had no relatives at all. She was a round orphan and knew nothing of her roots. And yet David worried about how Evelyn might react to the news. He didn't want to argue, yell, or get into a fight. He realized that this conversation would be difficult, but he hoped that he could find the words to make it easier and more clear and trusting. David made the decision to be sincere and open in his conversation with his wife, at least this one time. When Evelyn came home from the hospital, he didn't procrastinate. He decided to talk about everything right after a light dinner. "I have important news to tell you. I have finished all the necessary preparations and am ready to go on watch in another city. It's a very good job, and I wouldn't want to miss such a chance." David started hesitantly after dinner. "So does that mean you can take me with you? I've missed you so much. We've stopped spending time together. Maybe the coast will make me feel better." Evelyn replied hopefully. That's what I wanted to talk about. To tell you that I don't think it's possible for me to take you with me in these conditions. It would be difficult for me to take care of you and work at the same time. David lowered his eyes. So you're going to leave me here alone sick? I can't manage my condition on my own. How can you do this to me? Screamed Evelyn, jumping to her feet. Please understand. David jumped up after her, trying to calm her down. I'm worried about you, and I want you to get the best medical attention and care. Is there anything else that can be done? Either way, I will call often and keep in touch with you. But I need your support and companionship so much. You must realize that these are the last months for me, right? Right? Every moment with you is so important. Evelyn cried again and clutched her heart. I know, and I'm sorry it's so hard for both of us. David ran over to her and helped her sit back in her chair and poured her a glass of water. But we'll be able to communicate by phone and video calls, and I won't leave you alone. I've already signed the contract and I can't refuse. He answered honestly, though he didn't regret his words for a second. I know you have to work, but it's so hard for me to accept. Just promise me you'll come back as soon as possible. Evelyn exclaimed. The glass in her hands trembled. I promise I'll be back as soon as I can. My love and concern for you won't fade, even at a distance. I will always be near you in my heart. But despite the frank conversation, there remained a lot of misunderstanding between David and Evelyn. They almost stopped talking, and so all the time passed before they left. David realized that when he left for his shift, it would be the last time he would see his wife. And while it wasn't a particularly hard decision that would require unquestionable willpower and emotional stability, it was still a little sad. David was faced with a sense of not being believable and unwillingness to believe that the situation was that serious. The ability to accept reality and realize the inevitability of loss was a difficult psychological process that caused resentment for some time. In addition, going on watch forced David to evaluate and rethink his priorities and values. Now he considered himself a free man and could well start building a new relationship there. But still he was embarrassed by his own fear, inconsistency, and inability to control the situation. Evelyn was left home alone and could have made one last mistake. In the end, the decision to go on watch and leave his dying wife behind was easy enough, but it was only on the train, when he saw the sad eyes of Evelyn seeing the train off on the platform, that he became a little sad. Realized that he could have caused her serious emotional wounds and feelings of guilt, of self-destruction. But he also realized that this decision had changed his life forever, and he would never be able to see or hug his wife again. Evelyn was left standing alone in the station, even though she was surrounded by a huge crowd. Her shoulders were slumped. The picture of the transience of life was instantly transformed as the train began to pull away from the platform. All sounds fell into silence, as if the breath of nature itself froze as it heard the train's readiness to move. The horn sounded. Slowly, the city limits disappeared, and the windows revealed majestic panoramas with buildings and people that seemed like mere glimpses in the distance. The rattle of the train and its movements became for David the voice of freedom, filling lost memories and promising new adventures. For Evelyn, this situation was an extremely difficult and pitiful one, requiring extreme strength and skill to survive the emotional shock and loss. Evelyn, despite everything else, was smitten with her husband and hurt to the very core of her being, leaving behind a permanent mark of loss that will serve as a reminder of such a difficult choice. David's path led to a cozy town and passed through a small pier. Although David had not been struck by the beauty of the sea and the waves for a long time, He was surprised by this place with the open, among the dense green plants and the waters flooding it. Boats and yachts swayed quietly on the gentle waves, as if beckoning the traveler to his port. The wooden piles of the pier, covered with moss and algae, gently seemed to sway above the surface of the water, giving the place an atmosphere of mystery and magic. The smell of the salty sea pervaded the air, mixed with the scent of the wind that played gently in the leaves of the trees. There were also tiny boats on the dock, moored one after another. As if they were a friendly family, they shone their fresh colors under the rays of the sun. Their only desire was to conquer the seas and oceans, to go on adventures, to explore distant shores, and return with booty and new stories to tell around the campfire in the dark of night. Surrounding the jetty, the greenery of the shrubbery, and the poisonous but insanely beautiful oleander flowers that spread along the shore added to its picturesqueness and special enchanting atmosphere. Slowly swimming in the water column fish, invited to plunge into the element of magnificent, shimmering waves under the southern sun and see with their eyes an unexplored underwater world. It was a place where people found refuge and peace. Everyone in town was quiet and unhurried. David didn't like it. He wanted entertainment, but to enjoy at least some time of silence and peace, he wouldn't refuse. Here he could stop and gaze lovingly at the stars, dream of the unknown, and find inspiration to create great art, which was why he had come here. It was a world where time stood still and hearts found peace and true serenity. David was a shipbuilding engineer. He was a highly skilled professional of his craft. There was no taking that away. He specialized in ship design and development and played a key role in creating seagoing vessels that would stand the test of nature's might and ensure safe sailing. The work there was to begin with research and development. He studied the specifications, requirements, and functional features given to the customers, analyzed the data, and made important decisions related to the selection of the ship's shape, dimensions, and basic parameters, and afterwards translated ideas and concepts into actual drawings and designs. He created detailed plans and specifications, defined the structure of the vessel's hull, the location of systems and equipment on board, worked out and took into account the physical forces acting on the vessel, such as the marine environment, wind, waves, to ensure its stability and maneuverability in various conditions. And once the design was finalized, would start working closely with other specialists, mechanics, electricians, and systems engineers to design and install the necessary equipment systems and machinery on the ship, would provide testing and trials of the ship before it was put into production. The project was long-term and was going to take a very long time. David himself did not know exactly how long, which is why he left Evelyn with a heavy heart. He was required to oversee the production and construction processes, which required observation and attention to detail. David was a highly creative and technically savvy professional who launched new vessels, gave them life, that were capable of conquering the waves of the seas and oceans, to serve as reliable and safe means of transportation on the water. The first thing after settling into the temporary apartment, David went for a walk and enjoyed the wonderful views of the sea town, where the white sandy beaches ended and the boundless blue sea began. The sun enveloped everything around with a golden tide, smoothly crept through flocks of white fluffy clouds. The wind caressed my hair and gave a feeling of freshness and freedom. The view of the harbor that spread out before my eyes took my breath away. The snow-white sails swayed gently on the longing waves like living creatures that embodied beauty and elegance. Lanterns along the promenade by evening began to glow with yellow lights, emphasizing the magical atmosphere of night walks. The seaside town was as if enveloped in the aroma of freshly baked bread. sea breeze, and blooming gardens. The local markets were scattered with flowers, fresh fruits, and fish freshly caught from the depths of the sea. There was a picturesque harmony of life and nature all around. In the evenings, the city was transformed as if reborn. Restaurants and cafes beckoned with umbrellas, and the air was filled with the aroma of fresh seafood being prepared for dinner and a special atmosphere of long-awaited rest. Life in the city was booming. Merry laughter, dancing in the streets, created a sense of celebration and endless joy. People went for walks. Beautiful music from summer cafes, clinking glasses, conversations, and the air became fresh but humid. The sounds of local music enveloped David. Narrow streets, alleys stretched between houses with architecture that epitomized wealth and history. The city was a living reflection of the beautiful and magnificent, peaceful and romantic. Under the scorching afternoon sun of the hot summer, a picture of true romanticism unfolded. There was a sense of lightness and freedom in the air that permeated every cell of the body and made the heart beat faster. In this beautiful season, David, who came to swim and sunbathe on the beach with overwhelming joy, met a beautiful welcome. We are also happy to welcome you to our company. From the very beginning, your professionalism and dedication to your work caught my attention. I am sure you will be a great asset to our team. Benjamin got up from his desk and invited David to see his new private office. Thank you for your confidence. David followed. I always try to stay on top of things and do my best for the success of the projects I am involved in. I am glad that my diligence and experience in this field has been recognized. You actually have an impressive track record of work and accomplishments. Your approach to problems and commitment to excellence are precious qualities in our team. I am confident that your presence and skills will positively impact our work. Benjamin went on to praise the new employee. The office was not very big, but it was cozy. When can I start? David asked. Can you start today if you have any questions or difficulties? Know that you can always contact me, but you will also need to find an assistant or a secretary. I'll place an ad and you can choose. Okay. Thank you for your cooperation and support. Of course I will. David nodded, looking around. I look forward to seeing you in action and working together on our projects. Thanks again. David was immediately put to work, and he was completely absorbed in his work, forgetting all about his wife. He didn't call her or even text her when he arrived and got settled in. And when the project started, he forgot to think about Evelyn. She was a phase. David was too busy. The ad that Benjamin had promised to place began to attract potential employees, but there were very few of them. Then one morning there was a knock on David's office. Kathy was very nervous about coming in for an interview. She didn't know anything about the construction court, but work experience was only important as a rank-and-file secretary. Kathy got up early in the morning and was determined and confident. She knew this was not her only but very important chance, and a successful interview could open the door to a major goal and dream. Her clothes were perfect as always. She chose an outfit that combined elegant simplicity and business restraint. In front of the mirror, she fixed her blonde hair, applied the right makeup to deliver confidence, and look her best. There was only one chance. She checked her paperwork several times, including her resume, portfolio, to make sure everything was in order. Kathy had researched information in advance about the company she had an interview with today and had prepared questions to show her interest and determination. On the way to the office, she kept repeating to herself that she had all the necessary skills and qualities to succeed in this role. She simply had to get a job at this firm for this position. There was a resounding come in from behind the door, and gathering her courage, Kathy stepped over the threshold into the spacious, bright room. Everywhere were tables littered with blueprints and models of yachts, ships, and boats. "Hello, I, David, am glad to see you in our company. What's your name? Tell us a little about yourself and why you want to be a secretary." There was a man sitting behind the desk who didn't even look up when asked this. But as soon as he looked away from the blueprints and saw Kathy, he froze. "Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to be interviewed. My name is Kathy. I am very organized, attentive to detail, and have good communication skills. I have seen your company grow, and I want to be a part of this team." Kathy replied in a rote manner, "Sounds interesting. Do you have relevant experience as a secretary?" Coughs her future boss. "Yes, I have experience as a secretary. I have successfully worked in this position in another company. I have a good command of office programs and am able to organize work processes efficiently." "Very good, Kathy. It is also important to me that the employee is able to communicate well with colleagues and customers. How do you see yourself in this role?" Although David asked Kathy the standard questions, she relaxed a little. His floating gaze said it all for him. "I am an open and friendly person, and I enjoy interacting with people. I always strive to help others and create a cozy working atmosphere. I am confident that I can effectively establish and maintain communication with coworkers and clients." Kathy answered to the point clearly. "I would like to appoint you to the position of secretary. When can you start work?" David took a bite. "Thank you for your confidence. I will be able to start working today. If there is such an opportunity?" Kathy smiled. David was over the moon. Kathy, that was the name of the blonde-haired girl he had seen on the beach, and now she was working right next to him, literally across the wall. Kathy was very quick and really professional to get involved in the work process. David had no complaints about her, and as time went on, he realized that he was starting to become more and more attracted to and in love with this girl. He began to pay more and more attention to her attractiveness, intelligence, and ability to handle the job rather than her looks alone. They began to spend more and more time together. David would find any excuse to talk to Kathy, and she would always make time for him to talk about various work issues and eventually more. And David realized it was time to act. "Good morning, Kathy. I am, as you know, a newcomer to this city, and I would be very interested in learning more about it. I hear you're very familiar with the place. Could you show me around?" "Good morning, David. Of course, I'd be happy to give you a tour of our beautiful city. Have you seen any of the major sites yet?" Kathy glowed with positivity, even though it was still very early in the morning and half the office was dozing. "No, I've only just arrived and haven't had a chance to look around yet. I would be very happy if you could help me with that." David could barely contain a yawn himself. "No problem. I know all the major sites, and I can tell you interesting facts and stories about each of them." Kathy waved his hands. "We can start in the main square and then walk through the historic center of the city and then have a bite to eat somewhere afterwards." "How does that sound?" "Sounds great. I'm looking forward to our walk. What time is convenient for you?" David grinned like a March cat. Kathy was more cooperative than he had originally thought. "Let's do it on Saturday afternoon, just when the weather is supposed to be nice, and we can walk around and look around." Kathy suggested. "That's fine. I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure our tour will be unforgettable, and I'll be able to learn more about the city than from the tourist brochures." "Oh, it'll be fun. I guarantee it. Don't forget to have your comfortable shoes and camera ready. You'll love the stunning views we'll see." Give me a call to arrange a location. And Kathy gave me a wink. Of course, stunned David. Thanks again for agreeing to help me out. I think it will be a great way to get to know the city and spend time in pleasant company. It was a pleasure to help. Summer sparked their acquaintance, turning each event into a little adventure. They spent many days together filled with beach walks, exciting picnics, and exhilarating adventures. Together they swam in the azure waters of the sea, realizing their innermost dreams of freedom and love. From under the shade of palm trees, David and Kathy watched sunsets that turned the sky into a canvas of bright lights. Their hearts were burning with passion and sincere attraction for each other. They realized that this love and this summer would be imprinted in their souls forever. The summer created the perfect space for them to birth the feelings that made David fully immersed in this unforgettable experience. In this colorful city, they found each other and opened their hearts to the impossible, turning unrealistic dreams into reality. They became the heroes of their story, proving that love born under the hot summer sun was able to become a beautiful and wonderful fairy tale. With each passing day, David was getting to know Kathy more and more, and simply went crazy about her. The first impression was not deceptive, but Kathy revealed herself to him completely only much later. She turned out to be a very glamorous girl, had impeccable style, and a vocation to be in the center of attention. Her appearance was always flawless, as if with an ironed pink chiffon ribbon. She had a graceful figure with long, slender legs, which she emphasized with high-waisted skirts and dresses. Kathy zealously followed the latest fashion trends and always displayed them in her style of dressing. She preferred elegant outfits consisting of symmetrical dresses, sequin tops, and pleated skirts. But at work, she was always dressed strictly and office-appropriate. On other days, her closet was filled with bright hues and beautiful fabrics that made her style catchy and eye-catching. Jewelry too played an important role in her look. She wore exquisite earrings with rhinestones and delicate and graceful necklaces with inserts of precious stones, and on her wrist, she necessarily wore elegant bracelets with sparkling crystals. And one could not forget about her essential attributes, high heels and handbags, which completed the image and made her even more glamorous. Kathy's character reflected brilliance, charm, and confidence. She managed to create an atmosphere of luxury around her and drew attention to everything. She was often admired for her looks and was not afraid to emphasize her virtues, always showing perseverance to achieve her goals, and she had the right set of skills and abilities to succeed in the world. David was charmed. She was open and charming, outgoing and energetic. She was able to get attention with her brightness and appeal, cared about her image, and looked flawless in any situation, whether it was a party, a business meeting, or just a walk around the city. Kathy was a bright star. Her style, confidence, and charm made her a style icon and inspired David to create several nautical vessels. He had found his muse. Kathy knew how to be stunning and create a unique look that no one could forget. When David found himself in this nautical city, something he had dreamed of for a long time, he was exposed to new experiences and emotions. An acquaintance with the beautiful Kathy awakened his inner, already forgotten feeling. He was fascinated by her youth, freshness, and directness. Her youth and energy stirred his soul and made him want to get to know her better. Her independence and confidence also impressed him strongly. She embodied a freedom and possibility that he thought he had never experienced before. David could no longer call himself a young man and certainly saw in Kathy the ideals that attracted him: openness, innocence, and carefree. Her ability to adapt quickly to a new environment and her outlook on the world impressed him and made him want to grow closer. He felt young again around her. The immense physical attraction was no stranger to him either. Her looks, her youthful skin, her carefree gaze, her playful smile were the magnet that drew him to Kathy. A natural attraction to her grew into David beginning to idealize her as a potential lover. Of course, he realized that these feelings were only the beginning. True love grew out of mutual affection, respect, and understanding between two people. Such a quick burst of emotion could have been a phenomenon that would quickly fade away. Therefore, it was important for him to find overlaps with Kathy in shared values, interests, and outlook on life to support the growth and development of the relationship in the long run. Kathy, dear, I've been thinking lately about our family values and our outlook on life. Started the conversation by David on another date with Kathy. They were sitting in a small restaurant on the waterfront, surrounded by the unique aroma of fresh seafood and spicy spices. The tables were right outside, and they had a breathtaking view of the sea. The interior was decorated in a nautical theme, with elements of waves, sandy colors, and wooden furniture. There was pleasant music blasting, candles burning on the tables. All this created a romantic atmosphere. It is very important for me to have a family where there is mutual understanding, love, and support. I believe that family should be a priority, and we should always stand up for each other. Answered his unvoiced question Kathy. I'm really glad that our views of the world are similar. David thought they were reading each other's minds too. Yes, that's so wonderful, dear David. Kathy laughed, covering her mouth with the palm of her hand. The menu offered them a wide variety of dishes made with fresh local produce, oysters, shrimp, octopus, and fresh fish dishes. I also believe that family is the most important thing in life. It is important to create a strong foundation on which we can build our future. I also hold principles, honesty, respect, and openness in relationships. David continued his thoughts. I believe in these principles too. It is very important to me that children are educated in tolerance and respect for other people and cultures. We must set an example of justice and kindness for them. Kathy hummed, leafing through the list of wines and cocktails. Everything was quite expensive, but it didn't bother the girl. I absolutely agree. I also want the children to become independent and successful in life. I believe that honest labor and hard work can lead to high results. David didn't even pay attention to what she chose, continued to look into her eyes, and unknowingly said, That's right, sweet David. Kathy reached across the table to him. I'm glad we're on the same page when it comes to our family values and outlook on life. David nodded like a chump and flushed his cheeks like a young boy. David wasn't the only one happy about the rapprochement, but Kathy was as well. After a while, she was jubilant when she realized that the man enjoyed spending time with her and didn't probe any further. She decided to act more forcefully and openly. Hi, how are you? You look especially attractive today. Kathy peeked into David's office in the middle of the workday, pre-locking the door and giving him a sly look. Thanks, I'm fine. How do you look? Amazing. What are we doing today? David was shocked. Kathy wasn't usually like this at work, but it was a positive shock. I thought maybe you could come over to my place after work. Enjoy each other's company. After all, you can do such interesting things in the evenings. She leaned down to his ear and whispered, Boo, that sounds like fun. But what exactly do you propose to do? Murmured David. I can show you my dancing skills. Quite good ones, by the way. Laughed Kathy. Oh, really? I've always loved dancing. Why don't you give it a try? Come on, let's do it. Kathy winked at him again and with a light gait left the office. Of course, David couldn't see her sly smile. David didn't care about work at all, not for the rest of the day. He was only waiting for the time when he could go to Kathy's house. She really drove him crazy when, in the evening, she closed the door behind him and began to move smoothly to the rhythm of the music. Delightful. I can't resist your charm. David admitted his defeat by her beauty. Well then, let's not limit ourselves to dancing. I know plenty of ways to make our time together truly memorable. Are you sure I can handle what you're suggesting? David swallowed and followed Kathy into the apartment. I'm absolutely sure. All we need to do is open up to each other and enjoy every moment. Just trust me. She looked David in the eye. I trust you. Let's make this night unforgettable. Only once David, building a relationship with Kathy, reflected that this was the first fulfilling relationship he had begun to create since his wife's death. Even though he had long been out of love and had stopped remembering Evelyn altogether, he felt vague feelings of guilt because it seemed to him that he was cheating on the memory of his late wife, even though this was nothing new to him. These thoughts and feelings caused a great deal of emotional stress and nervousness. Once in a while he even compared his new partner with his deceased wife, compared their personalities, searched for bits of the former in the new lover, and was tormented by an inner contradiction between the desire to find what had been lost and the desire to allow the new relationship to flourish. And to his surprise, found in their behavior and characters, and even in appearance, much similar, but referred it to a certain longing for the past relationship with Evelyn. David began to worry that Kathy might only stay with him for a certain period of time, after which she might find someone else, younger, more energetic, richer after all. This fear caused David to become anxious and uncertain about the relationship, and he became prone to self-restraint and suppression of his emotions to protect himself from thinking about it. Because David clearly realized that he was in love, happiness and joy became his constant companions when he was near Kathy. And when she wasn't around, he thought about her all the time too. He began to look dreamy all the time. His eyes became radiant. David surrounded Kathy with care and attention, taking an interest in her life, listening to her needs, and trying to help and support her when needed. He endeavored to spend as much time with Kathy as possible, showed initiative in arranging dates, and parted with other interests and responsibilities in order to be with her as much as possible, and constantly made various romantic gestures and thought of unexpected surprises for Kathy. Romantic dinners, trips to the movies, and expensive gifts, of course. Kathy, in turn, these expensive gifts and David's advances took as a given, never refused, and did not build herself up as an unattractive woman. For Kathy, it was important to receive expensive gifts and provision, much more important than a good and mutual partnership or sensual connection. She often began to show superficial emotions and often accepted things expectantly without any particular regret or gratitude. She pretended to be used to the lavish lifestyle created by the gifts and courtship of men and thought it was David's responsibility, and he bought into it. She showed little interest in his feelings and concern and didn't even notice when her behavior caused dissatisfaction. This only caused David to act more actively. Her main goal was to gain material satisfaction, not to create an emotional connection. And she succeeded. Kathy persevered towards her goal and never once considered the consequences of such a relationship on her partner. Kathy was confident that she had succeeded in creating the illusion of a life of love, harmony, and understanding for her and David. An ideal in which they both felt complete understanding, support, and mutual love. In this false life, each of their days was filled with joy and respect for each other. David was genuinely interested in Kathy's opinions and feelings and strove to help realize all their needs and dreams. Sometimes Kathy also had to pretend to be interested in him. They not only shared their joys, but also overcame difficulties and problems together. It was based on constant communication and openness. They discussed their feelings, aspirations, and hopes, and resolved any disagreements that arose with respect. Kathy sometimes rejoiced at David's successes and achievements when he finished one project and started another, and helped him overcome any difficulties at work in the early days. And apparently David was so enamored with Kathy that it was enough for him to talk about something more. "I have something very important I'd like to talk to you about," David began sadly as he and Kathy strolled through the stores. "Of course, I'm always ready to listen to you." "What is it about?" Kathy asked, hanging the clothes back up. "My wife died about a year ago. It was a terrible shock to me, and I still think about it. But I don't want to live alone for the rest of my life. And there's one thing I'd like to discuss. I want to offer you something that could change our lives," David said with a sigh. "I'm sorry about your wife's death." Kathy put her hand to her breast. "This is definitely a difficult time for you." "You never told me. I apologize, but what exactly do you want to propose?" "I want to propose marriage to you. I realize we've been together for a long time and we've always been very close. You know me better than anyone else. I think we could create a happy life together." David held his breath. "I didn't expect such a proposal." Kathy marveled, opening her eyes wide. "You know, I've always valued our relationship, but this is so sudden. What happened for you to make such a decision?" "Well, some time after my wife died, I realized that I had the great good fortune to have you in my life. You were always here, supporting and helping me. I have seen how you treat people, how kind and caring you are. I'm sure we can be happy together. I appreciate what you said, and it's important that you realize that I was also touched by your proposal. But I want to think about it. I need time to realize my feelings and to understand what I can give you in return." Kathy answered honestly, "Of course I understand." And although David's face showed sadness, he accepted it with dignity. "This is a big decision for both of us. Take your time. I'm waiting for you to make your final decision. It's important to me that you're happy. Thank you for understanding. I'll definitely think about it and give you an answer soon." The seasons, in a marvelous dance, changed each other. A new spring has arrived. It came unexpectedly, like a fairy, melting in her magic tassels, bedazzling colors. The hands of the clock turned over again, awakening the earth after a cold hibernation. A pleasant warm breeze embraced the blossoming greenery as if dragging it and giving tenderness to the flowering shoots. The fields came alive, filled with colorful flowers from bright yellow to delicate pink shades. Nature came alive as if by magic. The sounds of birds chirping filled the space, and the wind pranced the lush trees, dropping the first warm rays of sunshine on the ground. The buds promised an incredible symphony of colors that bloomed smoothly and gently like a kiss from the weak morning sun. The summer season had replaced spring. The sun was brighter and hotter, with colorful sunsets dawning. The sky was cloudless blue, like an azure painting on which soft clouds covered the traces of time and patiently walked across the expanse of the sky. The sound of the sea and the hum of the wild beaches made music, delighting the hearts of every traveler. Summer is very generous, gave its arrival warmth and bright colors. It embodied exuberant beach evenings, captured by the glow and soft shimmer of multicolored hues. The leaves of the trees glistened like precious gems, and the smell of blooming roses and jasmine enveloped the air with captivating aromas. Autumn had arrived, a fiery show of colors and shades then bright orange, then delightfully blazing magenta, then saturated red, all participants in one grandiose palette that made a feast in nature harvest fields and gardens, hid under a pleasant haze of golden mist. Autumn became a great artist, covered the earth with warm colors. The crowns changed their clothes into pictures of flames burning on the trees and scattered on the ground in a motley carpet of bright colors. A lyrical breeze called lightly for a walk, creating a rustle underfoot. The sun's rays warmed everyone with their caress for the last time before winter and gave hope for a new awakening. The mysterious winter was the final chord in this symphony of seasons. White flakes of snow floated in the air like winter fairies, dressing the naked nature in fluffy clothes. The whole world became silent, as if holding its breath. Before the great ending, all the slopes became children's slides, led by snow lambs, calling adults too for wonderful winter adventures. Nature fell asleep and covered herself with a thick blanket of snow. The air was filled with light and crystal rustling. Delicate snowflakes, like diamonds, began to fall from the sky, enveloping everything around with their whiteness. The leaves left on the trees, as if they had been drawn by artists, turned into branchy pictures decorated with snowy flowers and jagged caps. 2 years flew by. During that time, David and Kathy began to live together, and sometimes they talked about getting married. But for that, David had to return home, deal with the inheritance, and either stay in his hometown or sell the house and return to Kathy's homeland. His contract with the firm was coming to an end, and so was his watch. Kathy expressed a desire to go with him. David was fine with it. All the way home, David did not look himself. Memories, doubts, and just different thoughts were tormenting him, and Kathy couldn't help but notice it. I understand that this is a difficult and emotional time for you. I'll be there for you and help you through it. Kathy stroked David's back. Thank you, darling. There are so many memories in this town. I'm scared to feel anything. Scared that the emotions I've been through will come out. But remember, this is the past, and you've been through a lot. I'm sure you're strong and can handle it. If you need to, we can just take a walk along the waterfront so you can restore your inner harmony. You're right, a walk might help. David agreed. I want to remember the good things, the happy times we spent together, but sometimes the past just overwhelms me. Evelyn was sitting on the couch, his wife, who he truly believed should have been dead. She sat before him alive and well, a smile on her face. There was a blush on her cheeks. She was cheerful and beautiful. The man stopped in place. His eyes filled with genuine shock and disbelief. It was as if he was frozen in time, unable to comprehend what was happening. What? What happened? I was sure. Breathing heavily, David said. Hello to you too, sweet husband. Evelyn replied sarcastically. She wasn't even surprised. Oh yes, I am definitely not dead. I overcame death and was miraculously healed. For your pleasure, darling. Evelyn spread her hands. All while you were on watch and apparently having such a good time. Evelyn nodded at Kathy standing in the doorway. That you didn't bother to call me at least once. David felt a host of confusing emotions as his brain tried to adjust to the new reality. Outrage and bewilderment overwhelmed him, and he didn't know what to say or do. I can't believe it. How could you? Why? I assumed you were dead, whispered David, but maybe you're just exaggerating a little. Apparently, I overcame all the difficulties on my own and became stronger. Is it so hard for you to believe in a miracle? Evelyn replied ironically, I thought my loving husband would be happy to see me. David, inwardly, was torn with amazement, anger, and deep sadness. He realized that his trust had been broken, and now he was the victim of cruel sarcasm. Everything around him became blurred and foggy, and he was left at a loss to know how to restore the threads of his world. This shocking moment made him rethink his feelings and reconsider his gullibility. He mentally tried to find a way out of this confusing situation. He realized that his life would never be the same again, and he had to find the strength and wisdom to move forward regardless of the events that had occurred. "We have to talk." After a while, David spoke again. "I think it would be better if we divorced. I've met another woman." "Another woman?" Evelyn grinned. "What?" David furrowed his eyebrows. No, nothing." Evelyn dismissed it. "You and I both know that our relationship is long gone, and it's clear that we're not happy anymore. I propose we end this one-sided, burdensome existence and part ways." "Oh, what a surprise!" Evelyn waved his hands. "But I've been expecting this proposal from you for a long time. If only you had called. In fact, I have even already prepared all the necessary documents for divorce. We both know about your cheating and that the prenuptial agreement gives all your assets to me. So the divorce decree is just a confirmation of your dishonest behavior." "What? What cheating?" David cried out in horror. But the information gathered was enough to confront her husband. When Evelyn invited him for a serious conversation, she was sure she knew everything about his cheating. When she made all her accusations and presented the evidence, David was shocked. He tried to deny, passed off his cheating as a misinterpretation, but all his tricks were pointless. He realized he couldn't hide anything anymore. "Like what?" "But all of these." Evelyn dismissively tossed a multitude of photos of David with other women onto the table. "Plus that cute girl stomping around in the hallway. She's the perfect living witness to your affair. Kathy, she won't confirm anything." David almost squealed in horror and backed away. "Really?" Evelyn marveled playfully. "How can you say that? I thought all this had passed you by, that you knew nothing about my cheating." David said, shocked, "Did you really think that I was so stupid and didn't know anything? I've had information about all your adventures for a long time, and it helped me to be accurate about our situation." Evelyn replied ironically, "You can't prove anything." "Nothing." David shouted again. "Kathy won't confirm it." "I will, David." Suddenly Kathy, who had been a shadowy presence in the room all this time, spoke up. "I agree to proceed with this divorce with dignity. It may be the best solution for both of us. We each deserve happiness and a new beginning, especially after all these years of disappointment. So think about it carefully." Evelyn winked and David marveled again. Kathy was doing exactly the same thing. "What do you mean you'll confirm?" "Then that bastard will take everything away from me." Dumbfounded, David asked Kathy, "But don't you deserve it?" Coldly, Kathy replied and looked coldly at David. Evelyn had told David, when they first met, that she was an orphan, and she hadn't lied much, and he hadn't checked. She and her sister Kathy had been left without parents or relatives at a very young age. They were used to trusting no one. Plus, Kathy was studying abroad at the time, and her presence in Evelyn's life didn't even have to be hidden. Evelyn was the older sister, and left an orphan, took over the care of the younger Kathy from childhood. Instead of her parents, she became her support and protection, constantly making sure that her younger sister had everything she needed for a normal life: food, clothes, school supplies. Evelyn was always helping Kathy with her homework, explaining the materials she had already gone over. She took the time to pay attention and answer all her questions. She knew that studying was important to Kathy because it was her future. While caring for her little sister, Evelyn was also her good friend and support. They spent time together doing their favorite activities, socializing, and having fun. The sisters became inseparable and always supported each other during difficult times in life. Evelyn was always there to support and help Kathy. She always found words of comfort and support, gave strength to the younger one, so that she did not lose heart and went forward, not giving up in front of difficulties. Evelyn was accompanied by a great load and difficulties throughout her life, but she never regretted her choice to be close to her younger sister. The most important thing for her was to know that her sister was happy, and despite the difficulties, they would always be together, supporting each other. Evelyn dedicated her life to taking care of Kathy. She was not only a sister, but a caregiver, mentor, and a real mom to her baby sister. She was just a child, but took on the responsibility of being the head of the family and supporting her little sister. Became her pillar and was always there for her, listening intently to her joys and sorrows. Evelyn was Kathy's shoulder to lean on in comfort when life threw up unpredictable challenges. Whether it was trouble in school, heartbreak in love, or debilitating emotional moments, the big sister was there to support and guide. In addition to emotional support, Evelyn was actively involved in her younger sister's life. She made sure her sister was always dressed and eating well. She gave Kathy the best overseas education she could get and always tried to provide her with stability and security, so that Kathy would not feel inferior to other children from well-to-do families. Evelyn worked extra hours and found any part-time job she could to provide a decent living for her sister. However, despite her best efforts and desire to help Kathy, Evelyn had a hard time herself. She often felt a great responsibility for her younger sister's fate and worried about her future. At some moments, when it was very difficult, she underestimated her own strength and felt tired, but even at such times she did not give up. Her own life opportunities and dreams were often put off by Evelyn, postponed for later, or dismissed altogether. She sacrificed her time, her freedom, and her own personal life to remain a reliable support for Kathy. As Kathy grew older and received an education, a man came into Evelyn's life. She fell in love, was insanely happy, and finally felt secure. Their relationship became more and more serious, and Evelyn even began to think that it is going to be a wedding. But then David appeared on the horizon. He blatantly seduced Evelyn. She lost her head and, yes, let David take her away from her fiancé with promises of happiness and riches. Evelyn abandoned her lover. For the rest of her life, she blamed herself for what she had done, but her conscience would not allow her to try to return to him. At their first meeting, David made a deep impression on Evelyn, shining with charm and words full of promise. He enticed her with his stories of the luxurious life they could lead together, lured her with mountains of gold, gifts, and love, promised her the happiness she had always dreamed of. After all, the difficult life of Evelyn and her sister was always full of challenges. Evelyn, who became the only supporting pillar in their lives, had to work hard to provide her younger sister and herself with a decent life. She had to work several jobs with irregular hours to earn enough money to cover basic expenses and provide for her younger sister toys, textbooks, gadgets, clothes, and a roof over her head. She didn't want Kathy to feel deprived of something that other kids her age had. She had very little free time. She had no opportunity to build her career and get a proper education. Evelyn faced a lack of support and guidance in the family. Without parental care, she experienced difficulties in learning and in adapting in the social environment at first. Evelyn had to assume not only the role of financial support, but also taking care of her younger sister, helping her with homework, putting her to bed, and acting as her protector. Evelyn found it difficult to build her own personal life and find time to relax. She felt a sense of unspent potential and a desire to take more out of life, but constant financial and family commitments prevented her from doing so. So, of course, under the influence of David's sweet words of protection, support, help, financial freedom, and promises, Evelyn decided to take this step. She broke up with her lover and left him for David and new hope. They married, and their fairy tale life together began. However, circumstances changed from day to day. David soon enough stopped showing care and attention to Evelyn. Instead of fulfilling his promises and making her happy, he started cheating on her ruthlessly and carelessly. Evelyn found herself entangled in a dangerous web of lies and betrayal. Her heart was broken by promises that turned out to be nothing but empty words. What seemed like paradise to her turned into the killing pain of disappointment and hatred. She tried to believe that the man would find his way back to their original love and happiness, but his false promises and cheating kept escalating. She realized she was in a dark and hopeless situation. With each passing year, Evelyn saw that David had never loved her, and that she was just a tool for his own selfish pleasure. He used her to fulfill his needs and desires, didn't or wouldn't even think about her feelings or well-being. Finally disappointed and exhausted by all the lies, Evelyn decided to end this marriage full of bitterness and sadness. She realized that she deserved the true love and respect she had never received from this man, but she didn't want to leave David so easily. David did a great job at first pretending as if his days were disappearing into the abyss of work and commitments. He easily found excuses for his constant business, always covering up cheating under the pretext of work. He found work to be the perfect hiding place that helped him to safely conceal his secret trysts and to put up a facade of a perfect and faithful husband. It was all laid out with such cunning that Evelyn, so devoted and faithful, suspected nothing for years. David used work as an excuse to be away from home all the time. He arranged long business trips, shifts, overnight stays at the office, overtime. All this time he spent with his mistresses, hiding the truth from Evelyn. He made up fictitious urgent cases, endured long phone calls, created the illusion of business and seriousness about his work. He played a terribly dangerous game and violated Evelyn's trust and loyalty. She believed his words and explanations, stayed where she was, unsuspecting. Her heart remained blind before the cheating and lies of years that had reigned incessantly in their relationship. Evelyn continued to believe David and to look forward to him without thinking about the secret meetings and deceit that were going on behind her back. But one day everything came to light. Kathy, having learned of her wife's suspicions, advised her to hire a detective to find out the truth and come to the town where her sister lived to help her emotionally. It didn't take the detective long, however. David wasn't exactly hiding outside the house, apparently feeling impunity. The detective thoroughly studied the phone records, followed David's movements, and fully analyzed his schedule and route of travel. "Hello. I'd like to update you on the results of my investigation. Unfortunately, I have discovered that your husband is cheating on you, Michael," the private detective reported. "But you're sure of your findings?" "I knew it." Evelyn sat back in her chair. "Yes, I have made a thorough investigation, observing your husband. He meets a number of women and spends considerable time with them. Here, the photographs." Michael pulled a photo out of his briefcase. "I can't believe this. He's ruined our relationship. What am I going to do?" Evelyn pleaded. "I realize this is a very difficult situation for you to decide what steps to take." Although detective work was familiar to him, he still sighed very heavily. "I don't know where to start. This is so painful. I valued our marriage and believed in his fidelity. I understand your emotions. It's important to remember that making decisions in a situation like this requires equanimity. I can provide you with additional evidence if you'd like. You have the right to the truth and to defend yourself. Michael answered her, "Thank you for your understanding and help, but I guess I need time to think about all the options and solutions. Try to stay calm and reach out to trusted people for support," advised a frustrated Evelyn, the detective. "Thank you again for your help and professionalism," replied Evelyn aloofly, looking at one point. "Feel free to contact me if you have any further questions or need additional help. I can recommend a good divorce lawyer," said the detective in parting. Evelyn realized that David had long ago forgotten about honor and morality. He deliberately used his job to lie and deceive. However, his cunning and deceit could not last forever. The time of truth was bound to come, and lo and behold, his foolish, as he obviously thought, wife stumbled upon evidence that changed everything. Her wounded heart could not bear more deceit and treachery, and she decided to uncover the truth of his deeds. David proved to be a master of secrecy and deception, but sooner or later, the truth always finds its way out. Life with him for Evelyn, for many years, was pain and disappointment. However, her determination and strength helped her move forward, leaving deceit and misery behind. "Hello, my sweetheart." Evelyn invited Kathy to visit her home because David was away on watch again, and there was no point in worrying about his premature return. "But what can I tell you? I found out that David is cheating on me. I feel betrayed and disappointed. I feel as if everything has fallen apart. Oh, my dear, that's terrible." Kathy hugged her sister tightly. "But we knew about this, his betrayal. I know it's hard for you to go through all this, but remember, you deserve to be happy. That's who you are. Don't let his mistakes determine your future destiny." "But how can I just forgive him and forget? It's hurtful and painful. I wanted to realize that he hurt me." For the first time in a long time, Evelyn cried. "I understand, and I'll help you get revenge, but it's also important to focus on yourself and your health and well-being. Find a way to be strong and move on. But I just can't bring myself to let it go and just forgive him. It's such a breach of trust. You deserve to be with someone who will respect and love you and your feelings. And about revenge, I have an idea," Kathy said slyly. "I deserve to be happy, and I won't let his act define my life. I will work on my recovery," nodded Evelyn, gathering her thoughts and strength. "Exactly. I'll take care of everything and you rest. I am always here to support you on this journey. Know that you are not alone and that you are strong and worthy of the best." A fire of resentment and rejection lit up in Evelyn's eyes. Her heart flooded with a relentless sense of disappointment, ambition, and a desire for revenge for the lost years and missed opportunities. Anger pierced through all her thoughts and emotions. At first, Evelyn felt stunned and relieved to learn the truth, but then, after talking to her sister, an exhilarating storm of emotions surged within her, bitterness and sadness mixed with determination and a thirst for retribution. Her self-esteem and dignity had been desecrated, and she promised herself to regain what she had been deprived of because of his treason. Every false word he'd spoken, every smile he'd smiled in photos with another woman, became vitriolic curses that fueled her passion for revenge. She determinedly picked up the pieces of her broken soul and used them to create armor to protect herself from further pain. Her emotions became the engine that inspired sweeping action. Instead of wallowing in bitterness and despair, she transformed her pain into strength and purpose. And that's when she and Kathy devised a plan. Evelyn had always been a clever woman and upon marriage had entered into a prenuptial agreement, which the not particularly savvy David had read quite carelessly. Treason implied moral compensation in the amount of all the property of the spouses. Of course, David had no idea about this, otherwise he would have become more secretive. Now Evelyn only had to prove his guilt, but she knew that the photos did not reflect the full picture of what had happened. Everyone would think that the women in the photos were not David's mistresses. For the next few months, she and her sister led a complex and secret trail, trying to find out more information. Kathy used all her life skills to find witnesses and evidence of the affair. Evelyn, on the other hand, found a lawyer who also began preparing a prenuptial agreement case. They both disguised their actions very well. Evelyn did her best to be the kind of person her husband knew. She and Kathy worked as a team, each contributing to uncovering the truth. And then, Kathy suggested finding the real witness, the mistress herself. But as she approached each woman, she was refused contact. They said they had no idea what Evelyn was talking about. After a while, and those unsuccessful attempts, she stopped. Suddenly, it would become known to David, and then their plan could not work. One mistake would be worth all the years of Evelyn's torment. After all, David could indeed become more secretive or find other ways to avoid giving away assets in the divorce, though he may have talked or convinced his mistresses not to tell anyone anything just in case. Over the years, he'd acquired intelligence too. Evelyn's hands were down. Without a real witness, all evidence was only superficial, and no one would accept such evidence, and there was plenty to fight for. So Evelyn suggested to Kathy herself that she become Kathy's mistress. Strangely enough, the sister agreed. I couldn't stand his cheating and lying any longer. I decided to teach him a lesson and divorce him, taking all his assets. That way we can finally get rid of him for good and start a new life. They met at a cafe as far away from David's home and work as possible. Are you sure you're willing to go to such extremes and use me in your plan? What am I supposed to do? But Kathy was determined. Yes, I'm serious. I want you to play the part of the new mistress. He's going to another city for a few years. Get him a job, show him some attention, and seduce him. I'll tell him I won't be around much longer, and then he'll stop hiding. But in reality, it'll just be my empty words. He won't test me. He's just waiting to get rid of me. He deserves it. Evelyn told me everything. It's a very dangerous plan, but I'll do what I can. He must pay for his actions, whispered Evelyn, waiting for that moment when, after all this, we will have a new life and forget the past. We have to make sure that this plan doesn't hurt our relationship too. Kathy replied confidently, I promise that after all this, you and I will start a new chapter in our lives. Our family, you and I, is the most important thing to us. We are the only ones we have for each other. Kathy went to the seaside town early and convinced everyone that she had lived there since birth. She began her preparations carefully and in detail. She made sure to acquire knowledge of the local customs, culture, and history of the town. To look as believable as possible, she researched background information about the city. She looked up information on the internet, read books, and watched documentaries. She tanned herself as well as the locals, found out everything about the firm David was employed by, and made sure that the advertisement for a secretary would not be seen by many people. She learned the language and accent of the locals, listened to audio recordings, talked to people from the region, and tried to imitate them in her speech to sound more natural. To make it even more believable, she learned about local habits and traditions and the way of life of the locals. She studied the cuisine, learned about traditional holidays and customs, so that she could behave accordingly. All of David's mistresses were like from the cover, and Kathy had to make her style very glamorous, which was not at all typical of her. The guys she dated always liked her for her natural beauty and simplicity. With David, it wouldn't have worked. Eventually, through her meticulous training, she became like a resident of this town as well, and found herself able to confuse everyone in her role. But most importantly, became a dream woman for David. She herself had many difficulties in relationships. She was also betrayed, and she wanted to help her sister more than anything else. And having met him, Kathy began to implement her plan to fall in love with David up to her ears. She showed her spontaneity and confidence, was open and honest about her emotions and feelings for him. Interested and willing to invest her energy and time into the relationship, Kathy became his support, muse, was attentive, showed interest and concern for his life and hobbies, was willing to listen to him, support and help him achieve his goals and dreams. She emphasized her uniqueness and individuality, showed what she could be, even though it was all played up, demonstrated her talents, hobbies, and passions, was confident and not afraid to be the kind of woman David liked, created exciting and romantic moments, showed him that she was willing to share magical moments with him and create unforgettable memories, was always positive and cheerful, smiling, attracting the attention of others, made me jealous, wanted myself, and lifted my spirits with my joy. Positive attitude and good sense of humor attracted David as much as possible, and adventurism and openness to new experiences became common. Kathy supported his initiatives and suggestions, was ready to try something new and unusual together. But at the same time, Kathy deftly harmonized in his selfish image and did not cross the line, cold and calculating woman. Over time, began to manipulate David. She was a very beautiful girl and skillfully played on the emotions of David, who was in love with her, used his weaknesses to her advantage. Her beauty and charm caught David's attention, and he gave himself to her attraction without a second thought. She knew how to use his love and attraction to her for her own advantageous position and took all the gifts he was able to give. She began to show indifference to his feelings, began to take advantage of his weakness, exhausted his resources and time to the maximum, but stopped showing signs of gratitude or reciprocation. Her only interest was to obtain material benefits and revenge for her sister. And David, as if afraid that she might be the one off the hook, began to become even more attached to her, and he didn't realize that the prey was himself. Kathy gathered a lot of evidence, and since she herself was present in the photos and video, she began to sleep well. Now she and Evelyn could prove David's true identity. And when the contract came to an end, David himself went to his hometown to collect his inheritance. Kathy had asked to go with him, and there was Evelyn waiting for them, having had a wonderful vacation during those 3 years. I can't believe you could do this. David was horrified by the story he had heard. All this time I thought our relationship was real. That you loved me. How is that possible? He turned to Kathy. I realize this may be shocking to you, but everything I've said is true. I never felt true love for you. Our relationship was fake. I used you to help my sister divorce you. Kathy shrugged. But I thought there was something more between us. I felt like you understood me and supported me, that we had a connection. I apologize if I ever gave the illusion that we had a real connection. Kathy laughed ringingly. I pretended to love you to provide support for my sister. I realize it's selfish and unfair to you, but you deserve it. This is so hurtful. Howled David and clutched at his hair. I gave my heart and emotions, and it turns out it was all just a lie? I don't deserve to be lied to like this." "Yes, you do." Kathy snorted evilly and stepped back to the window of the bright, spacious living room. "Let's see what you can prove." David bellowed, "Sure. We'll see about that." Evelyn replied and got up from the couch as well. "You look happy." David sneered back at his wife. "I'm happy about the divorce, darling, because I have something to show you." Evelyn winked and held out the prenuptial agreement, where the necessary points were highlighted. "What is it?" Reluctantly, David took the papers. "Our prenuptial agreement. I don't think you're entirely familiar with its contents. Isn't it?" David swallowed as he read it carefully. "Honey, I never realized you were so naive. I knew about our terms from the beginning." "You didn't. For every betrayal, you promised me full rights to your property." Evelyn smiled even wider. "That's not true. You set this whole thing up. I hired the best lawyer to prepare for this moment. I've done my own investigation and gathered irrefutable evidence. What are you going to do with this information? I thought you weren't serious about taking it all away. My legs almost gave out. Honey, I just want you to realize that you lost this time. My decision to divorce isn't just a wish, it's a favorable deal for me, and I'm going to get everything I own." Slyly replied Evelyn, feeling gleeful at last. "You've always been a fool. I didn't expect this." "Well, honey, now you know not to underestimate me. So divorce is the path we both chose, but remember you gave me the right to everything you have." Evelyn waved the documents. David didn't find anything to reply, and spat on the living room floor and left, slamming the door. Of course, Evelyn and Kathy won. The jubilation of Evelyn, who still sued her husband for everything in the divorce because she knew he had been cheating on her all along, was vivid. She decided not to remain a victim, but to open a new chapter in her life, and was able to do so. A lawyer who specialized in divorce became her ally in this unequal struggle. They carefully planned a strategy, collected irrefutable evidence, and defended Evelyn's inheritance rights. Through it all, Evelyn was helped by her strong character and her beloved sister. She not only did not give David a chance to justify herself, but also to avoid responsibility for her actions. Her emotional strength and determination amazed everyone, including even David himself. Gradually, Evelyn recovered from the sadness and betrayal and found the strength to hope for a better future. She realized that she didn't need the man who had cheated on her, even though she loved him with all her heart. And instead of sinking into despair after the betrayal, she used her strength and determination to claim a fair recompense for all that had been stolen from her over the years, and had been most priceless years. Kathy had always been the only person to whom she could confide and speak of her suspicions. She listened to all of Evelyn's worries, shared her observations, and gathered all the facts. How could she do it? How did she have the moral strength? Evelyn did not know, but Kathy had forgotten nothing. She remembered perfectly well that her sister had done everything possible for her future, had made her childhood beautiful, had laid down her life for her upbringing. And that help was only the few things Kathy could thank her sister for. The result was the end of a 10-year marriage to David, a traitor who thought a lot of himself. Evelyn made the decision to leave him and start a new chapter in her life, without a man who was unfaithful and untrustworthy. Her sister became her support and encouragement during this difficult time. She helped Evelyn to finally understand her feelings, comforted her, and helped her in everything. David felt a real blow to his soul at the moment when the realities of his situation became clear. It was a unique moment when his world was flooded with betrayal and deceit, which he had not expected and which he could not and did not want to believe. At first, he was overwhelmed by a feeling of utter dumbness, as if his inner world had shrunk to the size of a grain of sand. Could this be real? How had he miscalculated so badly? Throngs of thoughts swirled in his head that threatened to throw him off his steady equilibrium. A wave of bitter rage coursed through his every cell, interfering with quiet breathing and closing off the path to clear thinking. His heart began to beat with such force that it seemed to jump out of his chest, and blood rushed through his veins. David was at a complete loss, not knowing how to react to the situation. The feeling of deception he experienced was deep and heavy. It was as if a darkness was hanging over his life. He wondered about the questions to which he could find no answers. How could this have happened? How had he not noticed everything that was happening in front of his eyes? He felt foolish, deceived, and helpless before the cruel reality, but he never considered himself guilty. A flame of disappointment flared up in his soul, which ate away both his faith and his trust in people. This shock awakened in him a desire to detach himself from the deception, restore his self-esteem, and make a decision about how to move forward. He was devastated and broken, though. He gradually gathered his thoughts to find the strength and ways to change his destiny. Yet, he eventually gave up. He couldn't resist the undeniable evidence. But alas, in the end, the shock of being betrayed by his wife and her sister's mistress did not trigger him to reconsider his values and make decisions that would help him recover and start a new phase of his life. He remained the same, only very embittered at the world. One day, Evelyn woke up to the sound of a phone ringing. On the other end of the line, she heard a voice she had never forgotten. It was the voice of her longtime lover, whom Kathy had found and who had been waiting for Evelyn all these years.